This episode of the podcast is brought to you by New Bloom Labs.
It's time to take a second and be honest with yourself. Are you frustrated with your third-party lab? If so, there's no need to worry. Most cannabis producers are. Whether it's the long wait for your certificate of analysis or inconsistent reports or reports that are just hard to understand in general, the good news is it doesn't have to be that way. My advice? You call New Bloom Labs. They understand the cannabis industry and what's important to growers, processors, and manufacturers. New Bloom Labs is leading the industry with potency testing of Delta 8, Delta 9, 2 isomers of Delta 10, and a dozen other major and minor cannabinoids that are shaping the industry. So stop waiting for your testing results, and instead, for superior science and rapid results, call New Bloom Labs at 844-TEST-CBD or visit their website at newbloomlabs.com. Superior science, rapid results, New Bloom Labs. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Marlo Nicole. She's the CEO of Greenwood Company. Hello, Marlo. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Also, thank you very much for asking. I'm excited to have you on today. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, for those listening, I have Marlo Nicole on. She's the CEO at Just Mary Cannabis, which is a free delivery service in Los Angeles that features local minority owned brands. So, Marlo, before we dive into your company and the market in general as it relates to delivery services for cannabis in California, let's talk about your background. So, how did you get started in cannabis, and what's your journey?
So, my background in cannabis, or at least how I got started, was I had a security company, and a friend of mine who had just started to do cultivation in the Coachella Valley area asked me to write a security plan for him. So, I wrote a security plan for him in order for him to get licensed in the city of Coachella, but he lived in LA. So, I was asking, why are you doing it out there when you live in LA? And so he basically explained to me that uh, the city had a social equity program that had not been opened. And so he went basically to a location where he felt he had an opportunity to be licensed. Fast forward, he explained to me about the social equity program, and I looked into it, and he called me on the day that the program deadline was for submitting applications for Los Angeles. And I said, you know what? Let me try and apply. So I applied, and I definitely met the criteria for social equity. Didn't know that I was going to be approved, but that was basically my introduction into the cannabis world. And it's been great ever since.
It's been a whirlwind ever since. And what year was that?
That was, I want to say 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay. Wow. So that social equity program really kind of was a driver to kind of help you get your foot in the door, basically.
No, absolutely. I was really green otherwise, didn't have much information on the legal cannabis market. Obviously, growing up in Los Angeles and in Inglewood, I knew a lot about the cannabis business just because that's what people did, growing
Right.
up in the area. But when they legalized it, it was something very new and unique, and it required me to do a lot of homework and studying in order to really understand the how to get into it.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, like we're still learning, right? Every day. It's like we're learning something new about the plant. And that's so what when as you were kind of first starting, what was one thing that really struck you or was like just fascinated you about the cannabis plant?
Um, the healing aspect, actually, my mother was in a lot of pain, and she ended up having to have a full hip replacement surgery. But prior to her hip replacement surgery, the only thing that actually helped her with her pain management was cannabis. And so she's not a smoker. So we found gummies for her, and she fell in love with the edibles, and that became kind of a nightly routine in order for her to be able to sleep, just to get relief from the pain. So I'm still learning a lot about it. I would love to be able to come up with things for people like my mother that aren't necessarily into cannabis, but have an opportunity to see all of the benefits from a medicinal standpoint.
Hmm. Yeah, those stories are always the best when you can actually cite like a testimonial, if whether it's a friend or loved one or whoever that has taken it and they've seen like night and day effects.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's great. That's awesome. And so I want to talk to you about, like, we saw a lot of trends last year, specifically in the cannabis space during the pandemic, right? We saw consumption and adoption of cannabis kind of skyrocket, right? Even with comparable levels of alcohol consumption. And then we saw the need for delivery services, right?
Absolutely.
Because due to the social distancing and the spread of the virus. So, tell us a little bit about the growth of the cannabis delivery services space during COVID, and kind of what you're seeing now in present time.
So during COVID, I think the delivery space for cannabis, it was inevitable. It needed to happen. If you look at just cannabis in comparison to anything else in the retail market, delivery is the way to go. You can look at Amazon's success. You can look at Instacart's success. It really doesn't matter what the product is. Delivery is essential because at the end of the day, people want convenience. And so with the cannabis market, it's really no difference other than you have people that are really interested in the nose, or you have people that are really interested in feeling it. Is it moist? Is it sticky? Is it all of these things that people are looking for? But even with that being said, the delivery became essential and grew because it had to, and people were not comfortable going into a store. It was more difficult, having people try to line up outside. Speaking from these retailers, I've seen people lining up outside, and it it just it had to happen. And then
You're talking
right,
about curbside pickup, right? When they're like,
curbside
yeah.
pickup. And then when they were open before they had to completely kind of shut the doors, just trying to meter, the traffic. It already had that level of security where you wanted to meter traffic. Adding COVID on top of that just made it 10 times worse. So you have to decide as a retailer, do I want this, huge line outside in front of my building, or do I offer delivery? Curbside service is only good if people are out or if people are interested in going out. But for people that are more comfortable staying home, delivery is the way to go. And even still to this day, I think delivery, it can be more successful because you have an opportunity to reach more people depending on how you do it and how it's marketed. You can reach more people through a delivery service than you could by trying to get people to come into a store.
Hmm. So two-part question here, still related to COVID. So, like, during like the lockdowns, and again we saw that increase in consumption, and then obviously with delivery, like, did you see a lot of new delivery service companies emerge in the cannabis space during that time, and even now? And second question is, um how does a delivery service company in the cannabis space differentiate itself? I mean, it's kind of like an Uber, Lyft type scenario, right? Where it really, I would imagine, has to be customer service and a number of other things that can help differentiate the brand from another.
I agree, and the answer is yes. I did see more delivery services. However, I wouldn't necessarily say they were new because what ended up happening was a lot of the retail storefronts started to offer delivery. So that increased the number of delivery services, but not necessarily the number of retail names per se. So it's kind of like being able to take one business and split it into two parts. That's what a lot of the retailers did. In terms of people that are just starting deliveries, I didn't see really many new companies. And
So
one,
when you sorry to stop you. When you say split, you're just talking about, so they just kind of added a new line of business to their operation, and that was delivery for that particular dispensary.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, in Los Angeles, that's what they were allowed to do. With them shutting down the doors, the regulations allowed them to offer delivery, which essentially gave them a new license without having to apply for a new license.
Wow. So are there a lot of like what percentage would you say of dispensaries in California now offer delivery?
I would say probably at least 30%. I would
30% increase?
And what I think differentiates the different delivery companies is not just the customer service, but also the quality of the items that they carry. And it's kind of funny. I was just speaking to a friend about this the other day. You can always tell a black market, um, dispensary versus a legitimate licensed one. Packaging packaging and the items that are being sold, they're so uniquely different. You'd almost have to be blind to not be able to tell. The
How so? Like, is it that they're missing certain regulatory compliance labels or messaging, or is it that they're just marketed and presented completely differently?
They're marketed and and packaged completely different. So, for an example, a black market storefront or a black market delivery company may have some items that are packaged, but everything is kind of generic with kind of stickers that make one item different than another. Whereas an actual brand, they actually take the time to package everything separately and individually. So it's more like walking into a store, a retail store. You expect to see a nice display. You expect to see end caps. You expect to see placement. It's like a real store. Whereas, the flip side of that is kind of just like walking into the gas station and grabbing, something off the shelf. And I don't mean like a top-notch gas station. I mean the one in the middle of nowhere where they just say all the chips are over there and you just kind of go get a bag out of a bin and it's just kind of all over the place. So
Right.
like structure wise, you can just tell the difference. It's a lot of
Got,
care that goes into these licensed facilities.
got you. So that makes sense, and it's surprising to me when you compare like the black market or illicit market delivery compared to the licensed deliveries, because the illicit market is so established, right? It's kind of insane. Me being in Texas, right? There is no adult use. We have a very limited medicinal program. So when you hear about the illicit market and how it's thriving, I mean they're pretty organized, right? I mean they operate almost like they're a legit business.
Yes, they do. So believe me, most people that are in the legal market came from the not legal market. And what I think the difference was is again the just the packaging and trying to get your product on a grander scale. So you almost can't do it the same way because it has to be attractive. Because people that own these retail stores and retail deliveries, they want something that looks nice.
Hmm.
And so, in the black market, it wasn't so much about looking nice. It was about the quality of the product or, all of those other things that I mentioned earlier. Now it's about the look.
Right. Okay. So I would imagine also, in addition to like we touched on the customer service, you said the quality of the product, right? That I would also imagine education could be also a way to differentiate your brand. Like
Definitely.
because the plant touches and has so many different formulations in which you can consume it, it touches a lot of different people from many different demographics and backgrounds, right?
Absolutely.
So like what do y'all do at Just Mary in terms of educating your customer base in regards to the efficacy of the products that you sell?
So one of the things that we do from a delivery perspective is we do have a phone number that we answer, during delivery times and we answer questions. We get people asking, I have this issue, what can I get? Or, what strain do you have for this? Or what's the strongest? Just really being able to have knowledge about the products that we carry and to be able to give that to the consumer, I think is number one. And then number two, to have a variety that they can choose from. Like you said, there's so many different ways they can consume the plant that we want to be able to offer, a variety of ways as well.
Hmm. Have you seen an increase in demand in terms of like organic good, organic products? There's this hyper focus now on farm to table, whether it's food or whatever it is, right? So it's the same for cannabis. These plants are grown, right? They're crops essentially. So have you seen an increase in organic
I haven't seen
products?
an increase, but I think that's one of the things that makes the licensed legal market more attractive, is that there are requirements that it tests properly. So, from a growing or crop perspective, you can't have harmful pesticides that people can actually consume. You're not allowed to have those things, and it can't have heavy metals, all of the things that people would traditionally have used to make it grow bigger, faster, and those type of things. We can't do. So the quality of the product is just that much better. And then from an organic standpoint, it, it's almost always organic. I mean, with the exception of using any type of chemicals. And unless you're a grower, you really don't know, per se, how people are growing their particular plant. What you do know is that, again, it doesn't test for any of the things that are harmful to people. So no one has actually come out and say, "Hey, can I buy something that's just completely organic?" I haven't heard that.
Got you. Okay. And like for Just Mary specifically, like what percentage of the market share does Just Mary serve in California
I would say in California, maybe.
or LA? I guess we'll kind of make it because
Oh,
that's where you operate out of, right?
right. LA 100%. Definitely.
100%. Wow.
Yes. We're all over Los Angeles.
And talk to me about some of the brands that y'all carry, right? Like and do those brands have different customer bases within each of them?
Somewhat. So we have the Just Mary brand, where we offer our specific strains and our own products. Then we also have, I'm not sure if you're into hip hop, but do you remember Dog Pound?
I do not.
Okay. So
I
there,
do like hip hop though, but I'm just
well,
not that
everybody knows
versed.
Snoop Dogg.
Okay, well I don't. I know all the mainstream hip hop, I guess.
Okay. So Snoop was involved with a group called Dog Pound. And so
Okay.
Dog Pound has one of the producers and artists was Daz Dillinger. And Daz Dillinger has a cannabis brand called Dog Pound Buds. We carry that. We also carry a full line of Just Mary edibles. So have a ton of different gummies, different flavors, different styles. We also have Love Bud, which is a mother son collaboration. I completely love their story. Talk about a story. So we have Love Bud. It's a very local brand, a mother and a son who rebonded over the use of cannabis, then started a brand and hope to basically get other people, other families, friends, relationships, and to show again how useful the cannabis plant can be in terms of healing, bonding, being able to open up. And so, again, that's the Love Bud brand. Then
Wow.
we also have a brand called The Wood. The Wood is a brand that started from a young man named Jonathan in Inglewood, and he owns a nightclub in Inglewood called the Savoy. He also owns a restaurant in Inglewood called the Wood, and so he has a cannabis brand called the Wood. He's got some pretty nice strains that are specific to what they like in Inglewood. Um, One of my other brands that I carry is Napalm. I don't have it on the menu now, but I will upload it very shortly. Very, very popular brand in California. It was done by the rapper and artist Exhibit.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you remember Pimp My Ride.
Yes, I do.
So that's Exhibit. Exhibit has a brand called Napalm. It's a very popular brand. So, in terms of being able to reach, everyone and having different products for everyone, I think the combination between the vape pens through Napalm, and we have the edibles with Just Mary, we have the chocolates through Napalm, we have Flower by Just Mary. We have Flower by Love Bud. We have Flower by Dog Pound Buds. And then we all have different strains. So whether you're looking for an indica or a sativa or something that has a higher THC or a lower CBD or a higher CBD, we have something pretty much for everybody to enjoy.
That's great. And at the beginning of the podcast, when I was kind of reading that the boilerplate of your company description, you feature these brands and they're minority owned businesses, right? So tell us a little bit about why that's important to you. And second question is what others can do to support minority owned businesses in the cannabis space.
Okay. So, why that's important to me is being in the cannabis industry right now, I am 1%. So, whether it's because I'm black or whether it's because I'm a woman, those are the type of brands that really need to be supported. They're not a lot of us. Again, if I'm part of the 1%, you can imagine how many of those brands actually get onto a shelf somewhere. So it's really important that as a consumer, and I think most people will agree that not just because of the social equity programs, but from a consumer perspective, the black community is a big consumer. Women are also underserved as a consumer, and that's one of the reasons that I started Just Mary the brand, and then named the delivery company after the brand. So the brand was actually first. And if you look at all of the brands out there to market, no one is really offering or doing anything that's attractive to females. Everything is kind of either neutral or it's more male dominant. So if you look at the Just Mary brand, you see the lady.
Mm-hmm.
She is
It's
the
a cool logo too. I liked it. It's yeah.
well, I don't know if you're into comic books, but that logo was actually drawn by Jason Sean Alexander, who does Spawn.
Wow. Okay. No, I didn't realize that, but it's very well done. It's very cool.
Thank you. Yes, so it's a very special logo to me. But yes, that's why I think it's important that people, do minority brands. And when I say
Yeah.
minority, to me, are a minority in this industry.
No, absolutely.
Are a minority in this industry.
Absolutely. And it's good to, to raise awareness due to that. You know what I mean? And also the fact that minorities have been targeted by this plant by the federal government for so long, right? It's dating back to the 1930s. I mean, the reefer madness era. Uh, people of color were targeted, and anything that they would blame basically their behavior on the plant and consuming it. And that's kind of where the propaganda and the prohibition started. And over the years, we've seen, lots of minorities get locked up and thrown in jail due to this plant for nonviolent cannabis related crimes. And it's a good time to be in the industry now, right? Because, there's opportunity, there's growth, there's public support, there's a lot of momentum, but it's really important to also not forget those people who paved the way, to allow us to be where we're at today. Absolutely. So, tell me now. Let's kind of switch gears and talk about like the current state of things, right? So, we're seeing at the federal level, the Senate is starting to put together, proposals that target reform and for cannabis, and then also potential talks of legalization. So, you've been in the space long enough, Marlo. Tell me what you think is the outcome of all this, and where do you see ourselves in maybe a year from now?
I don't know if it's going to be in a year from now, but I think it's definitely going to become federally legal. If you look at all of the states, I think there is only a few states left that haven't legalized it in some form. So it's only a matter of time before the stigma is gone and people are seeing it for what it is and what it's done for people. And I mean, we're fortunate enough right now that we have, a president and a vice president that are both kind of pro cannabis, and they both use that as their platform. And I think that people are going to hold them accountable to what they said they would do, and that it's going to happen. So I personally think in 2 years we'll see it. I think it takes a long time for them to kind of wrap their heads around these regulations, which is why I think we see them changing so much and so often. From a tax perspective, unfortunately, that seems to be the biggest hurdle for everyone in this industry because
You mean the 280E, the tax code where
I
yeah.
mean, everything,
Yeah.
everything from cities, states, and counties trying to see how they're going to regulate it, to them seeing how much, what percentage they're going to charge, to them seeing what they're going to use that money for. Everything surrounding the legalization of cannabis has to do with taxes. And I think as soon as they realize and figure out how they want to go about that part of it, we'll see it start becoming legal a lot faster.
Got you. And what about plans for Just Mary? Like you mentioned, you're dominating the LA market. So are there any plans to expand, maybe into other adult use states in the future?
Absolutely. I would love to be able to expand. We're right now we're really just trying to build the brand in itself, and by building the brand, you just marry that furthers all parts of it from the actual product itself in addition to the delivery. I'm in the process of working out some deals up north in the Bay Area of California, so we're covering again one major county in Southern California, but soon I hope we'll be able to offer the same or similar service in Northern California as well.
That's exciting. Wow. Well, I look forward to following y'all's progress as things evolve in the industry, Marlo. And before we wrap up, I want to give you the floor and leave the audience with any thoughts that you have.
My thoughts are, again, support the minority brands. We do exist. If you don't see us in your store, ask for us. We try to make those connections, but again, it's very difficult to get a shelf space. A lot of store owners want, you know, uh, money to be on a shelf. Some of them are willing to support, but they have comparable items. So I think it's important, especially for some of the smaller companies like myself that maybe don't have, the big store marketing dollars in order to be able to market the same, that people still see the quality in our products and support the brands.
It's well said, Marlo. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time and your insights, and I know the audience really enjoyed it as well. Where can they find your website and social media if they want to follow and learn more?
We're more predominant on Instagram. You can follow us at Just Mary Cannabis or Just Mary Delivery. Uh, Follow us at both.
Boom. There you go. Well, hey, thanks again so much, Marlo. And yeah, good luck in the future. And I look forward to having you back on real soon as things evolve.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.